And we get it rolling on the Krueger Show Friday morning, 11 a.m. on the West Coast, 6/16. That's right, June the 16th. Man, we're in the middle of June already. Kids out for summer. Kids coming home from college. Got a kid playing baseball this weekend up in Chico. A lot of good stuff going on. I'll be on 95.7 The Game today between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. with Mark Willard. Farhan Zaidi's going to stop by. We'll talk a lot about the Giants and Dodgers, which gets rolling tonight. But in the house on this Friday, a co-branded show, Jack Hammer, who does a phenomenal job covering the 49ers on his YouTube channel and for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, is here. What's up, Jack? Good morning. Good to see you.
Hey, Larry. Good to see you, too. Friday, it's the best day of the week. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. And, you know, I entitled the live stream Kirk Cousins to be San Francisco's last resort at quarterback. And there's a story that's making the rounds in the last day or so that Cousins and the Vikings don't plan on having any more contract talks until March. So he's gonna forego extension talks and at least until the springtime. And it sounds like Cousins is going to hit the free agent market next offseason. He says he would like to retire as a Minnesota Viking, but the team may want to go in a different direction. The regime that hired him is no longer the regime in power in Minnesota. There's a new GM, a new head coach. The Vikings are 46-35-1 under Cousins since they signed him in 2018, or since he's been there in 2018. Yeah, I guess they signed him as a free agent. But it's only resulted in a couple playoff trips and only one playoff win. And with the new regime in place, it's viable that they may go in a different direction at quarterback altogether and just pass on giving Cousins that pricey multi-year contract that you know he's coveting. What we know is that Kirk Cousins likes Kyle Shanahan, that Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan drafted him in Washington, that Kyle likes Cousins. And there's a lot of people going, no, Kirk Cousins. Go with Trey, go with Sam, go with anybody but Kirk, go with Brock. But, you know, I don't know how you see this, but I see this as unlikely that you're going to see Kirk Cousins with the 49ers. But in my opinion, Jack, there's a direct path for Cousins coming here. And that is just simply if Brock Purdy shows that, you know what, he's really more of a backup than a starter. If Trey Lance has high upside but never realizes it. If Sam Darnold's turnovers at SC and with the Jets and Panthers follow him to San Francisco and the Niners wind up at the end of the year, you know, not getting the Super Bowl, not having a quarterback of the future, at that juncture, I don't even think it's possible that he would be a Niner. I think it's likely that he would be a Niner. That's how I see it. Give me your thoughts on Kirk Cousins as a player and the potential for him coming to San Francisco.
Yeah, I'll start with the potential of coming to San Francisco, and I agree with you. I think the only way that this happens is if everybody else fails. If Brock Purdy doesn't become the guy, you know, he all of a sudden regresses from what we saw in his first 8 starts. Trey Lance gets on the field, and he's not the guy, and he proves that he isn't finally. You know, we need to see one way or another what he is, but if he proves that he's not the guy, that's another reason. And like you said, Sam Darnold failing as well. As far as Kirk Cousins, the player, there's a lot of people that like him. Here's the thing is, you know, one of the things I've heard over the last 6 years is the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo's good enough. He's going to put up really good numbers for you during the regular season, but he's not the guy that's going to take you over the hump. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is either. Kirk Cousins is Jimmy Garoppolo, but a guy that can throw the ball down the field a little bit better. He hasn't been able to take the Vikings over the hump, even though he had very good talent around him during his time there. And I don't see him coming to San Francisco and all of a sudden being a different player than he's been everywhere else, just like they say about Sam Darnold.
Do you think Cousins is better than Jimmy? Who would you rank as the better quarterback between Cousins and Garoppolo?
I think that there's a lot of similarities between the two in their overall results. You know, Cousins definitely has the ability to get the ball down the field better than Garoppolo, but they're both make weird, boneheaded mistakes from time to time. I mean, you know, just go back to last year in the postseason. It's what, 4th down, game's on the line. You've got to pick up whatever it is, 10 yards, 6 yards, whatever it is, and he throws a 3-yard little drop down pass instead of going for the first down. That's Jimmy Garoppolo in a nutshell. That's what drove people crazy about Jimmy Garoppolo, is that he would take those short throws. He wouldn't force the ball down the field. And that one instance, I know it's just one, but that's those two guys being very similar. And, um, there's, I think that within the 49ers community, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't looked at as well as maybe he performed for them. And Kirk Cousins, I think, is maybe a little bit overvalued because he can get the ball down the field more.
It's interesting. I've interviewed Kirk Cousins. I like him personally. Like, I like interviewing him. I think he's a good guy. He's a cool guy. He's a guy that I like talking to. And then I look at last year, and I just feel like he was a prime year of his career. He was 34. And I thought he played really, really well. I mean, Minnesota went 13-4. He completed 66% of his passes, right on his career average. He had 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. The interceptions is a little high. But then when you look at Minnesota, that had a disastrous defense. They were, I think, 31st or 32nd in the league in defense. And also his offensive line allowed him to be sacked 46 times, the most of his career. 46 sacks for Kirk Cousins. I mean, that is a ton of sacks. So I don't know. To me, 13-4 on a team that had a horrendous defense and no offensive line to speak of, and Dalvin Cook got hurt, and it's like, I think he had a pretty good year. I just don't, to me, you got Brock Purdy. He's cheap. If you go for Kirk Cousins, no matter what you pay him, it's going to be very, very expensive by comparison. And it just kind of it limits what the rest of your roster can look like. And let's be honest, if the Niners are going to get Kirk Cousins, they're going to get the tail end. They're going to get age 36, 37, 38. He's not going to be more mobile. He's not going to be, better, you would think, at 36 than he is at 34. Overall, I would say I think he's more trustworthy than Jimmy. Jimmy was more likely to have the bonehead play. But you're right. Cousins hasn't won big games. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to, how do you play in big games? And I kind of feel like Jimmy's I think overall, what's the baseline of Cousins? I think the baseline of Cousins is higher than the baseline of Garoppolo. Mm-hmm. But I think Garoppolo's got an ability to elevate a little bit in big moments where Cousins kind of regresses in those big moments. And when you mix it all together, I think they're very, very much similar. I'm not saying they're the same guy, but it's a very comparable player to Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think there is definitely you can definitely make some comparisons between the two, in which they would be, like you said, comparable. The other part too, you mentioned the salary cap and all that stuff, and that's something that Jed York mentioned last night during the former State of the Franchise, was their ability to go out and get a guy like Javon Hargrave. And that's predicated on the fact that they have these young quarterbacks that are taking up such a small amount of their salary cap, to then go out and spend all that money on a guy like Kirk Cousins. If you're going to do that, then there's going to be players like a Brandon Ayuk, who I know that's been a topic of conversation, whether or not he's going to be signed long-term. Then you start to have really tough decisions about other guys on your team, because Cousins is going to be a lot more expensive for you against your salary cap. Whether it's now or down the road, you might be able to fit him in, but it's going to cost you down the road, because you've always got to pay that bill at some point.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the state of the franchise. What was your takeaway? I mean, I was not privy to any of it, so I didn't. I have no idea what was said there, or what kinds of things were thrown around. But I don't know how much you can glean from what you've read or heard about it, or if you were there. What was the state of the franchise event like?
I watched it on YouTube. I'm not sure exactly at what point yesterday it was on. I caught it as I was driving home. And, the thing for me that's really struck me, and it wasn't just yesterday, but it came through again yesterday, is Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch being on the same page with how they're going to build this team. And a topic of conversation this offseason has been, and this I think comes from Steve Wilks, has mentioned how he wants to make this defense better than it was last year. And the 49ers themselves have said they want to make this defense better than it was last year. And then I think you look back and you take a step back and you say, how are you going to get better? You were the number one defense in the league last year. Can you really do that? And Lynch did a really nice job of explaining that, how they went through the process. And, he said on the defensive line, we're not as good as we came to the conclusion that we weren't as dominant. We weren't as good as we were in 2019. And you kind of step back and you look at what they did last season. And I think that holds true. They had They didn't have as many guys. Yes, Nick Bosa was tremendous. And I think that's the thing is their numbers aren't that far off, but when it's just one guy that's producing for you all the time, that wasn't the case for them in 2019. Back in 19, they had Armstead and Bosa and Buckner and Ford all performing at a very high level. And I think you start to get yourself back to that with the signing of Javon Hargrave.
I thought it was interesting how Lynch, talked about, him and Shanahan having dinner at Lynch's house with Jed and how they approached it. And, Lynch was like, hey, I'm going to go this way. And Shanahan's like, no, I wouldn't do it that way. I'd do it this way. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It gave us a little glimpse into kind of the inner workings of how things go. But, I also think that little anecdote kind of shed some light on why Jed York gets a bad rap, because Jed York has, unfortunately, the whole thing didn't work out with Harbaugh, but Harbaugh had some, culpability in that as well. And it's just like, I just always feel like people are very harsh to Jed. And at the end, what I see is a guy who's very passionate about winning, and that's willing to write the check. He just at times has gone with the wrong football leadership, and so they haven't been doing things the right way. Now he's got a good duo that he can believe in, and every time they go to him saying, Jed, we need this to help us compete, he's all on board. So in a lot of ways, I think Jed has evolved from, over the years into one of the NFL's better owners. He doesn't have a draft board. He's not sitting there saying, I would take this linebacker, John, over that linebacker. He's not that. He knows what he doesn't know. He stays out of the way. He cuts the check when they tell him, hey, this is a difference maker type player that can take us to another level. He's all in. He's present. He's not like the Sharks owner who's on a different continent and is, checking in, once every 6 months. He's not Jerry Jones, where it's like Jed and Parag and we're buddies forever and we'll run things and everybody else is kind of just there in name only. He has entrusted this regime to lead, and he's cutting the check when he's asked to. How can you ask for more than that? I think Jed gets a bad name or a bad rep among fans and some people that are close to the team. I think in a lot of ways he does things the way you would want a model owner to, the way you would draw it up, the way you'd want your owner to participate. He does.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, a lot of it is because Eddie DeBartolo won 5 Super Bowls. And they haven't won any since he took over. And so from that standpoint, I understand the frustration with Jed York. There's certain little things that you could pick at here and there, but the game's different now than it was when Eddie DeBartolo held the team. The 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since the salary cap came in. And that's not totally correct. I mean, they won it the first year because they were ahead of the game. They knew how to kind of game the system before everybody else did. So that year one of the salary cap, they won the championship, but they haven't won one since. And I think you're right. The thing with York is he doesn't know what he doesn't, or he knows what he doesn't know, and he understands that. And if you want to, give him the positive side, for sure, he is not unwilling to cut big checks to make big moves, whether it's with the coaches when feels like he's made a mistake with the head coaches, or whether it's with a player that the front office is coming to him and say, hey, we really need to get this guy. It doesn't sound like he's ever turning them down and say, no, that can't work. If you bring to him a good plan and you can show why it makes sense, he'll go for it. And that's really all you can ask for right now in the NFL, because there's only so much money that you can spend on players, and the 49ers are doing that.
Okay, so now we're getting ready for training camp. Camp's starting in about a month. We'll find out at that point, I guess, where Brock Purdy is in his throwing. What do you expect to see from Brock in camp? What do you expect to see from Brock in the preseason? Or do you not expect to see anything from Brock in preseason or in camp?
No, we're going to have to see some of Brock. If Brock Purdy, the 49ers have said they want Purdy to start week 1. He's the guy. They want him to be there if possible. And if that's going to happen, we're going to have to see him on the field during training camp. Kyle Shanahan has said that before you put a guy in the field, you've got to see what he can do. So if Brock Purdy is going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers week 1, we're going to see him during training camp. It might not be when the fans are present, but it's going to be there at some point, because we get to watch all of training camp even after the fans are gone. So I think if he's going to be the week 1 starter, it's going to happen while we're there. So I do think that we'll see him on the field at that point. In terms of the preseason games, that might be where they decide to be a little bit more cautious with him. There's really not. Kyle Shanahan has said he'd rather just have scrimmages against every team instead of even having a game. I think he likes that because it's a little bit more of a controlled environment, and it's not so much of a show, and you can really get your work in. So we might not see Brock Purdy in any of the games, but I think we're going to see him on the field during training camp for sure.
Flav, by the way, throws a super chat. He says, Cousins isn't a gunslinger. Throws 2-yard outs in 4th and 10. Too conservative. Jimmy was a gunslinger at least. Not great, but at least he would go for it and give you a chance. Purdy is a gunslinger as well. I do think Cousins was very, very conservative. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback conversation. It's funny. It's incredibly polarizing. And people, and I do understand it because everybody's got their favorites. I think there are people that feel like Brock Purdy's my favorite and this and that. That's not the case. I personally predicted that Brock Purdy would be good, maybe ahead of a few people, but it's not like I'm wed to Brock Purdy. I could be happy with any of the quarterbacks, including Brandon Allen, if they're playing efficient football and the team's winning. But it is interesting. The people that are pro Trey Lance, see Brock Purdy as standing between, Trey and prosperity for Trey. And so there's so much negative. And it's funny, a buddy of mine who lives in Texas sent me a note. He's like, dude, I don't get it. Brock Purdy is one of the great stories in the NFL. I can't believe Niner fans aren't head over heels in love with what he did last year. No rookie quarterback leads their team to the NFC Championship game. He's like, that was incredible. I wish we had him here, and this and that. So he's talking glowingly. He's like, why is there so much negative for Brock Purdy? And I said, well, you just have to kind of understand there's a lot of people that, bought into the narrative of Trey Lance as being the face of the franchise when they traded so much to get him. And those people simply they're invested in that, and they want to see that come to fruition one way or another. Whether Trey succeeds or fails, they want to make sure that Trey gets an opportunity. So the more we were talking about it, he said, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand a little bit better. But it is interesting when you see the Trey Lance fans talk about Brock Purdy in the comparison. It's always a referendum on arm strength because they view Trey as a bigger armed guy. And so that's their argument. Trey needs to play because of arm strength. So many people have talked about so many different stats and this and that, this shows downfield and all this stuff. Then this guy Rollins makes a video last week and he's like, well, Brock Purdy's topped out. Topped out? How could that possibly be? He's a rookie. I just asked him at minicamp or at a rookie camp or whenever we talked to him a few weeks ago. I'm like, where are you compared to last year? He's like, oh, it's night and day. I know the offense way better. And it's so obvious that he's dramatically improved on the mental side of digesting the entirety of Kyle's offense. So I think the arrow's pointing up on Brock, but that's the argument. But then when you introduce Darnold to the mix, and I thought Darnold clearly has the best arm as far as he throws the most deep balls with the greatest accuracy, in my opinion, and that I've seen in this camp. I would say he's got the biggest arm of the bunch. Then all of a sudden it's a referendum then on turnovers. And then suddenly, it's like, well, yeah, but Sam turns it over. So, ultimately, I get it. I think the Trey fan just wants to see Trey out there, and he'll argue whatever he needs to argue, depending on who's standing in front of Trey or who's perceived to be standing in front of Trey. But, to me, it's like, hey, if accuracy is your thing, then Brock's probably your guy. If arm strength is your thing, then Darnold has probably got the greatest arm strength. But the Trey fans don't want to hear anything about that for sure. What do you make of that? I mean, have I crystallized that correctly, or am I misreading something? Because I don't really even see this even being a logical debate or even a debate worth having. It's just people that want Trey to start so bad that they'll come up with whatever argument they feel gets him to that result. And that's kind of where we're at. And I think if you try to make any sense of it beyond that, you're probably going to beat your head against the wall.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. Sorry about the train in the background, but it's that's the Lance Express going by. No, but that's exactly it. I think you look at the 49ers quarterback position, you look at the separation among the fan base, and it really is. It's the guys that are the folks who are very pro Trey Lance, and they're going to find any way that they can to knock Brock Purdy. The one that's been circulating a lot this offseason, and it continues to be the main one, is that Brock Purdy is limited. He can't. That's the main reason I think that the Trey Lance, quote Trey Lance fans, they see Brock Purdy as a limited quarterback. He doesn't have the size of Trey Lance. He doesn't have the arm strength of Trey Lance. And so he can't necessarily, what we saw in 2022, that is the best you're going to get out of Brock Purdy. Thinking that he's going to be better than that. How is he going to get better? His arm's not going to get stronger. He's not suddenly going to grow 4 inches. He's not suddenly going to, this and that. Well, forget about it. Look at what they do on the field. Look at how they go out and compete. Brock Purdy and what he did last year was, as you said, it was a great story. And he won every game that he started and finished. And when you look at his play, was it perfect? Absolutely not. It's very easy to look through his film and find plays that he didn't make and say, well, if he can just do this, then that elevates the offense. There's a couple of them in the game against the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs where he has guys down the field and he makes a mistake of bailing out instead of holding in the pocket and taking those shots down the middle, which he can make. And so, from that standpoint, I don't know. I don't get it. They'll say that they don't believe that Brock Purdy is the guy, although he played really well. And at the same time, they'll say Trey Lance is the guy, even though we haven't seen him show it yet. We've seen one guy show something and the other guy hasn't quite yet. Trey Lance might never get the opportunity because when he has received opportunities, he hasn't been able to capitalize on them, and that's unfortunate for him. So, as far as Sam Darnold goes, I think that's right there in the same conversation. You look at Sam Darnold and his career, you look at Trey Lance and his career, you look at these two, and they are very similar players in terms of guys who were taken very high in the draft because they have traits. They've got the size, they've got the arm, they've got the movement, they've got all those things.
Scout streams. They're the scout streams. You can point to tangible things and say, "Hey, man, this guy's 6'5". Man, this guy, scouts love players that they can point to traits and say, "Yeah, he's good because of this."
Absolutely, and it also speaks to the fact that the backup quarterback is everybody's favorite guy because you can create whatever story you want for that player. He's going to be whatever you think he's going to be because you haven't seen him not do it yet, right? And that's kind of the situation here with Trey Lance too. We haven't seen enough of him to say he for sure can do it. We also haven't seen enough of him to say that he for sure can't do it. And so that dream of him becoming the guy is still there. And so one of the things for me that I would say is if you see somebody that's really pumping up Trey Lance, take a second, especially if you see it on Twitter, look at their Twitter thing. Look at their banner. If they have a picture of Trey Lance in their banner, there's really no reason to argue with them because they're not going to change their mind.
Right.
And, or if it's on their YouTube thing, if they're a content creator, whatever. It's just, there's
or
if
their name on Twitter is Trey Lance QB1.
Correct. So that's
a good indication.
That's the other part of it too. And, you can yell and scream about both these guys, but I think that what we know is Purdy's done a very good job, and he's had a really good supporting cast around him. Trey Lance had a really good supporting cast around him, and the one game that he did really well in what do you call it against the Texans, he had a really good cast around him. In the game against the Cardinals, they didn't do so well in that one. So yeah, kind of it's and then you have Chicago where it's a wet conditions, and so even though people will point to all of his good balls in that game, they'll also give him the excuses in that one as well.
I in a way, I totally get it because I am curious like them. It's like I'm invested in the Trey Lance story just like them as well. So I understand that, Trey gives you a chance to dream that the Niners in-house have the next Patrick Mahomes. And it's just he's just an opportunity away from proving it. And so I understand while there's people that are like, hey, you know what? The upside is so great. Don't move off of this guy. Give this guy a shot. I totally get that. Let me hit a couple of these chats here because I think a lot of people want to weigh in on this topic, and then we'll jump topics. Let's see. We got JG. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other part of this too, and we can touch on this a little bit more when you're done with some of the things, was, the crazy thing that I've heard throughout this offseason, I put this on my channel a couple of days ago, is there's this desire to trade Trey Lance. And it's not just from people that don't like Trey Lance. It's from the Trey Lance people that are really pro Trey Lance too, because they don't feel like he's getting a shot. And so it's unfair to Trey. And I don't understand that narrative. If you're a 49ers fan, you don't want the 49ers to trade Trey Lance. Say what you want about him, but he is a good option for this team right now. He fits their salary cap. They've already built the team around him.
The players like him,
the players like him. Will he become, is he going to, who knows? Maybe Brock Purdy starts the season off and something happens to him, and then Trey Lance comes in, and all of a sudden Trey Lance is the guy, and he's able to prove it. We don't really know what his story is yet, I think. And that's the biggest thing is, I can sit here and I can tell you all of the things that I like about Trey Lance, because he does have all those positives we talk about. I can tell you the things that are the negatives that he brings. And I always wrap it up by saying, I'm not the guy writing a story. He is. And that's one of the things people get upset with me. They feel like I don't like Trey Lance. And my thing with Lance is he's gonna prove what he is. He hasn't, I've seen him a lot more than most fans have. You too, because we're at practice and we get to see portions of practice that the fans don't. We get to see portions of training camp that the fans don't. And you start to put all of that stuff together, and that's kind of where my opinion of him comes from. And I'm not sitting here saying that Trey Lance can't get to where he's going to be the quarterback for the 49ers and take them to another level. He just hasn't shown it at this point. There's some things that he needs to improve on his game. And at this point right now, if Brock Purdy's healthy, he probably gives the 49ers a better chance of winning based on the performance that we saw last season.
What I would say to a lot of fans is, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things in life that are interactive, but this isn't one of them. So, just sit back and watch. You're not tweeting 17 times a day stats that reveal Trey's potential or Brock's limitations are not going to make Trey the starter. Trey, you said it. Trey writes his own story. He will make himself the starter by how he plays. No tweet or no, comment is going to do it. And yet based on what I've seen, there are people that are just ripping Brock Purdy, who's never lost a game that he started and finished. And it's sad because are you a 49er fan? Are you supporting the 49ers? He's done good things for the 49ers. If you're Brock Purdy and you pick up Twitter, you're probably like, what the heck? What's going on here? JJ says some content creators claimed during Lance's first training camp that he was Steve Young 2.0. That's always a tough label. Steve Young's a Hall of Famer. But, once again, though, it's a great example of Steve Young was terrible in Tampa, and he became a Hall of Famer in San Francisco. So for the people who are like, Sam Darnold sucks, and he's always sucked, well, you know what? Sam Darnold could be Steve Young as well. He could be bad in a bad situation. He could be very, very, very good in a good situation. Gershon Perez, I'm in love with what Purdy did. Then again, I root for the team, not the individual. Okay, let's see. We got a couple others here that I want to read because some of these are pretty interesting. We got this one giving Grant Cohn credit. He says, J Boogie 510, the Coneheads. I got to tell Grant, he's got his audience is now the Coneheads, are against Brock Purdy. Grant has been wrong so many times. I don't know why he still has a legion of fans that support his wild ideas. Well, he's got a legion of fans because he's wildly entertaining and he's on point. I don't think Grant is the leader of the anti-Brock, deal. I talk to Grant almost every day. It seems like in the summertime, he's very complimentary of Brock. I just think that he also sees the upside of Trey, and he's one of the people that would love to see the Trey story come to fruition somehow, some way. And I understand that. I really do. Sushi says physical limitedness. That's what they view with Brock Purdy. JJ says some fans think Purdy, because Purdy looks like Nick Mullins, that his career will be the same. That's kind of true too. There's an awful lot of people who are just judging the book by the cover, right? And the cover looks similar to the Nick Mullins cover, and they must be the same guy, when in reality, they're nothing close to each other.
Yeah, I made that mistake myself based off of what we saw in the preseason games with some of the bad interceptions. I said that he kind of he reminded me of Nick Mullins, who's kind of Mullins-esque. Yeah, but then you watch him in the regular season, and there's no Nick Mullins at all in Brock Purdy. Their performance in the regular season couldn't be any more different. And so if anybody's still stuck on Brock Purdy being Nick Mullins, they're not watching the games.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say get current, and there's no problem making that initial observation, because you're looking at the same size player and a player in Nick Mullins that did start fast, and there was a honeymoon period, and then there was a crashing fall from grace. And I think there's a lot of 49er fans that are expecting that from Brock this year. Bobby says Darnold has a better arm than Trey, but Trey fans call him trash. So, Joey says, hey, I'm pro Niners. Whoever Kyle chooses to lead us at that position, I'm good with. So I think there's a lot there. Let's see. We got this one too from Joey. He says, Larry, are you going to be honest about some of the negativity towards Trey from the Brock side? I just think that there's people on that side. You're right, Joey. There's some of that as well. And what they're seeing is, hey, look, we have a quarterback that's played really, really well. Why are you guys on this campaign for Trey Lance? And I think that some people have pushed back so hard. And I made a video about this as well. If you go look at every Hall of Fame quarterback this league has ever seen, there's roughly 25 of them. 22 of the 25 started poorly in their first 3 years. So just because Trey, it hasn't been a mercurial ride to the top, or Sam Darnold has not been just an instant success, does not mean that those guys aren't going to wind up in Canton someday. Think about that. Think of Sam Darnold in the Hall of Fame. Think of Trey Lance in the Hall of Fame. How absurd that seems right now based on how they've started. But go look at the way that Terry Bradshaw started. Roger Staubach, Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, Steve Young. I mean, it's pretty rare. For every 5 guys like that who started slowly, there's one Dan Marino. There's one Ben Roethlisberger. There's one Patrick Mahomes. Those guys are truly the exception, not the rule. And then when you look at how few quarterbacks have started fast, that's why I would say you got to give Brock a little bit more respect, in that he has started fast and so many great quarterbacks have not. So that to me shows that he's, and there are a couple examples, Kaepernick and others, guys who started pretty quick and then petered out. I know lots of people will point to Garoppolo, his first 5 games. So I get that, but there's very few examples of that.
I agree with him. I do, there is, for me, and here's the thing, the way that I deal with it, Joey, is that I see this negativity, and for me, and I do the same thing with the Brock. The guys that are way on, it's easy to spot the guys who are kind of off base because they're way over here or way over here. And for me, if I responded to all those guys, my Twitter would be like constant, right? And so some of them I do, some of them I don't. I just kind of ignore a lot of the extremes, and I kind of deal more with the people whose opinion I think is a little bit more accurate or creates a conversation that's interesting. The other thing about that is, there's somebody that's in this comment section right now who, after minicamp, was talking about some mistakes that he heard Trey Lance make. And I just, I went to Twitter and I said, you're wrong. That's not what happened. His numbers would be this if this guy didn't drop the ball. I mean, so, I think that all plays a part of it too.
Yeah. And also I would say, there's a lot of people, and this is just out of necessity, right? Because we all can't be standing on the sideline. People have jobs and lives and other things that they're doing. But just understand the difference between firsthand account and secondhand account. When you're taking a secondhand account, whether you're hearing it from me, Jack, Grant, or anybody else, you're getting somebody's account of what happened. And invariably, there's going to be some editorial or some spin or some opinion mixed in there. And it's a big difference between firsthand account. Like I read everybody and I listen to everybody, but I trust my eyes on and I believe what my eyes tell me before all else. And so if I don't put eyes on it, I don't really I really don't feel that confident in going there. So just remember that a lot of times, is your opinion based on what you saw, or is your opinion based on what others have argued or said and that you kind of agree with? Flav says, when the roster is as good as this, you have to play the best guy right now. If we sucked, it would be different. Just a dumb draft pick given our timeline. I just think that you say, and then a lot of people are frustrated. What's changed with the 49ers and Trey Lance? Why are they no longer believing in him? I don't think it's that. I think it's just simply that there's pressure to win in the NFL, even for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who have been to 3 out of the last 4 NFC title games. They want a Super Bowl, and there's pressure in their world from their bosses, Jed, the owner of the team, to get that 6th Lombardi in the trophy case down in Santa Clara. And that's what they've been brought in to do. The 49ers are not the Falcons. They judge themselves based on winning Super Bowls. And John and Jed and Kyle are made men if they do it, if they get it done. And if they're not, they're somewhat failures. And I think they are all okay with that incredibly harsh standard. But that's the 49ers standard. And that was built by other people years before any of them arrived. So, and they're willing to accept that as their standard. That's a high standard. So they're all, to me, nothing's really changed other than there's some urgency now to get it done because Trent Williams is getting older and Kittle's getting older and this thing's not going to last forever. And they may only have a year or 2 left inside their Super Bowl window as far as Trent and George are concerned. And their timeline that they're gonna believe in is any timeline that helps them win this year. So I don't think they've cooled on Trey. I just think that they believe that Trey's timeline is more like a 2 or 3 year timeline, and that's why they prioritized Brock as the starter because his timeline fits their timeline. I don't think there's anything nefarious or anything. They don't have some hidden agenda. It's just they want to win this year, and they think Brock gives them the best chance to win this year. That's my sense of it, Jack. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're on the money. I think the thing is, they were ready to roll with Trey Lance, and last season it didn't work out because of the injury. And then Brock Purdy steps onto the field, against the Dolphins, and he just took the team to another level. And that's the reason why they believe in Trey Lance or Brock Purdy heading into this season. That's why they've said that he's the leader in the clubhouse because he performed at such a high level. And the 49ers, I believe them when they say that they still believe in Trey or they still like Trey. I think they do like Trey. I just don't think he's been able to show or that he's had that ability to show what he can do or really when he's been on the field has taken to that next level. So, that goes back to why are we even talking about trading him this year? Because right now this team's built. Keep him on the roster. Maybe he is the guy that leads you to the Super Bowl at the end of this year because of who knows what reason. Like I was thinking about this the other day. In 2011, they go to the NFC Championship game with Alex Smith and they lose. They come back the next year. Everybody's clamoring for Colin Kaepernick to be the starter. They continue to roll with Alex Smith. He's doing a really good job. He's playing at the best of his career midway through the season. He has the concussion against the Rams. On comes Colin Kaepernick. What happens next? The 49ers are in the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick. That story could happen again here with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance or Sam Darnold. I mean, just let it play out. The 49ers have 3 quarterbacks who can, I think, operate the offense to a certain level. One of them showed that he can do it at a higher level than the others at this so far. Let's see how it plays out this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't trade Trey unless you felt like you were getting a piece that helped you win the Super Bowl this year and you really believed in it. And you felt like, that piece was going to help you win the Super Bowl more than having him on the roster. Other than that scenario, there's no way I'm trading this guy based on his talent, based on his improvement, based on the way quarterbacks have gone down around the NFL, especially here. 49 Glory gives you a donation here. Jackie says, I don't think anyone would say Trey is better than Brock. The issue is finding out if his investment was worth it. I say keep him because of injury. And I agree with that. Flav makes another donation, empty in the clip. He says, Jack, if you felt confident that you couldn't win with Trey Lance, why would it make sense to pay him $10 million to be a backup? It's like having an expensive Josh Johnson why waste that money?
I don't think the 49ers feel this way. I don't think the 49ers,
and I don't feel that way.
Yeah, and I don't either. I don't think that I know that myself, and I don't think the 49ers feel like they couldn't win with Trey Lance. I just feel like they believe they get more with Brock Purdy than they get with Trey Lance. And I think that's the end of the story. I think you've said, Flav's asked me this question a number of times. I'm glad he's giving you some money here for it, Larry. It's just, I just don't see this as the truth. I think the 49ers feel they can win with Trey Lance. That they can continue to at least, we don't know about the playoffs or whatever, but I think they feel confident in their abilities to win with them. So why would they get rid of them?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only way you're moving him is no matter what you do going forward, whether it's at quarterback or any other position, you got to prioritize winning the Super Bowl this year. And we can get to that in just a second. Scott Hill says, great show, Larry and Jack. I want a chip. Both Brock and Trey together will give us the best chance this season. Oh, a chip. He wants a championship. I got you. I got you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally, name me a better quarterback room if Brock's playing well and Trey's ascending and improving. I mean, if you've got, and let's be honest, guys, at the end of last year, we're all sitting there watching what was the most frustrating football game I've ever watched in my entire life, the NFC Championship game. And why was it so frustrating? Because it went 3.5 quarters when we all knew the 49ers had no chance, and yet Philly, in all of our minds, was totally beatable, but the Niners couldn't beat them because they ran out of quarterbacks. So I don't know about you, but I sat there and I said to myself, this cannot happen again. This cannot happen again. They can't get in this situation where they're having quarterbacks on the roster for any other reason other than they can win games with them. And so here comes a room of Brock and Sam and Trey and maybe even Brandon Allen. And personally, I feel like there's 4 quarterbacks there that they can win a game with. And I think right now that to me is exactly what the doctor ordered based on how last year finished. And now let's see what it looks like in training camp. And there'll be injuries, and somebody's going to look better than we think. Somebody's going to look worse than we think. Something unforeseen is going to happen. And at least they're stocked up with 4 guys that they can probably win a football game with. And at the end of the day, man, that's really probably the biggest story there is. Okay, Niners Nation has a topic out right now. Why Danielle Hunter could be worth another big swing from the Niners. The one concern that I don't have a lot of concerns about the 49ers, Jack. The one concern I do have is I don't love the defensive line. I really don't. I mean, obviously Hargrave is awesome, and Armstead and Bosa are incredible. And people will be like, dude, you don't love the defensive line? Our defensive line is the best in football. I love Drake Jackson, but you know what? If Bosa has a three-week hamstring or quad pull, we're going to be staring at Austin Bryant and Kerry Hyder and Alex Barrett, and the drop-off from Drake and Bosa to the backups is not like last year where you had a Menahue and Jordan Willis and Ebukam and all these guys that really were almost like starters. They don't have that this year. I don't look at Cleveland Farrell that way or Austin Bryant or Kerry Hyder, and I like Kerry Hyder. But to me, they need another outside rush guy in the worst way. And I don't know if it's Danielle Hunter. I don't know if it's Montez Sweat in a trade. I don't know if it's Chase Young in a trade. But to me, they really have to get one more defensive end to round this thing out. Give me your thoughts on that. Where are you on their roster going into camp?
Well, there's the guy that you're saying, like, if you're going to trade Trey Lance and you're going to take a big swing, it would be a guy for like Danielle Hunter, right? And you're making that move because you don't believe that Drake Jackson's your guy long term. And so you go out there, you make that big swing, and Hunter would be a nice fit for the 49ers when you look at everything he's done. I like him better than Ngakoue because, I think he's a little bit better against the run. His numbers show that in terms of his ability to get tackles behind the line of scrimmage, gets to the quarterback a lot. The sacks have always been there. The quarterback hits, right around that same number. So if you want to go ahead and make a big swing, and it's a guy like Danielle Hunter, then you go and do it. But I think the only way they get a player like that is with the trade, since he's already signed with the Vikings, right? So that's where maybe you trade Trey Lance for Danielle Hunter, right? And that's not going to be something I think that would happen until you're sure about what's happening with the quarterback situation in terms of Purdy and Darnold, all that kind of stuff. But Danielle Hunter would be a terrific addition for the 49ers, again, if you don't believe that in Drake Jackson long term.
What about free agents? I mean, Ngakwe's out there. Justin Houston's out there. Houston's actually been very productive late in his career. I believe Jason Pierre-Paul's still out there. I'm looking at the money that Leonard Floyd got from Buffalo and that Frank Clark got from Denver. And we're talking about, $5, $6, $7 million guaranteed. That's totally affordable in the Niners budget from my vantage point. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that seems like something they could afford. Do you have a preference? I get my preference of all of the guys I've seen out there and rumored. A lot of people love Chase Young and are dreaming the Ohio State dream of pairing Bosa and Chase Young. I like Montez Sweat. I think Montez Sweat on this team is the difference between going to the Super Bowl and maybe not going to the Super Bowl. And he could even be the difference in winning the Super Bowl. And if they want a third round pick, you got all your picks next year. You already got 3 or 4 compensatory picks because of the way free agency went. I'm doing that, man. I'm giving Washington a couple picks. I'll call Martin Mayhew, send Montez Sweat on over. I think Sweat is the final piece to the Niners Super Bowl puzzle.
Yeah, I like it. Again, now it depends if you're making this move, because let's just preface everything in that you don't like Drake Jackson. I'm not saying you, but the 49ers, they realize that Drake Jackson's not the guy long term. Then a move like that makes sense, because especially Montez Sweat, because this is a guy who can play the run but also get after the quarterback. And I think sometimes when we're looking at these defensive ends, we lose we lose vision on the full picture, and we see just the sack totals, and we forget about the fact these guys need to stop the run. And that's how the 49ers build their team out, is they want to stop the run first, get to the quarterback second. And a guy like Montez Sweat would be a really nice fit. So if you're ready to move off, you can go and get him, go out and get Danielle Hunter, both those guys. If you're not off of the Drake Jackson train, but you just want to add another rush element to your team, and you want to do that through free agency, for me, the name is Justin Houston, because all the other names that we hear thrown out, those guys are all having to take a high volume of snaps. Look at their numbers. They're all around 60 to 70, 80% of the team snaps when they're active. With Justin Houston, that number's not there. He's been able to be productive with just around 35% of the snaps. So now you get a guy where Drake Jackson's your guy, but you take him off the field, now you get another element. I think that would make more sense. That almost gets you more along the lines of like what they had with Drake Jackson, with D Ford, right? Where you have Ford was able to be an every down player early on with the 49ers. I think he transitioned to more of a guy that came on only in pass rush downs later on in that season when injuries started to creep up on him a little bit. But having that element come off of the bench, I think that's the best way to go. Again, so it just depends on where your feelings are with Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I like Drake Jackson, but I would like to take a little pressure off of him. I believe in him wholeheartedly. I think he's going to have an awesome career, but I just want more. And I'll say this. I like the idea of the veteran Justin Houston as well, because he's a tough guy and he would add a lot to the locker room. I just think Sweat is maybe a superstar. And if you could get any kind of a difference maker, man, you do it. Nesto says, I saw the Seahawks are trying on trading to get Chase Young. Ugh, don't want to hear that. Mike Monahan says, add a right offensive tackle will get us farther than an edge rusher. What do you think? How much confidence, Jack, do you have in Colton McKivitz? I have a lot of confidence in Colton McKivitz. I really do. I think Colton McKivitz is going to play very, very well. I'm not at all worried.
Yeah, I think that I do feel like the loss of McGlinchey was a loss for the 49ers, but not at the cost that it would cost, to bring him there. Because of McKivitz, I think they're going to get a guy who's going to be able to give them similar level of play, maybe not quite as good, but pretty close to it when it comes to the passing side. And I think he might be even better in the run game. So I'm not overly concerned about Colton McKivitz at right tackle, not like some people seem to be.
J49 says, great show, guys. We need to get to work on getting Chase in here. He can also hold the edge. He'll be rejuvenated working opposite Bosa. Okay, Jack, if you're sitting in a barber shop and people know, hey man, you cover the Niners. Oh yeah, you've been at minicamp. Yeah, you've been at OTAs. Yeah. Oh, hey, who's looking good, man? Who's looking good? I'm sure you get that question. I get that question. I'll throw it to you. We're in the barber shop, and somebody who's a big Niner fan knows you're on the sidelines for all these practices, knows and says, Jack, tell me who's looking good. What do you say?
On the offensive side, you've got to talk about Brandon Ayuk because he looked really good. He was almost borderline uncoverable during practice. So I think you've got to talk about how good he is. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey. Over on the defensive side, I'm talking about Diamador Lenore. I think he's a guy who was really underrated with the way that he played last season, especially once he got moved to the outside in week 6. I'm also going to talk about. I didn't really get enough to see of Javon Hargrave, but I think, a guy like Kevin Givens, I think he looked good. Those linebackers, man, how good they look. Isaiah Oliver, I think he's an upgrade in the slot, the way that he was covering out there. So there's a lot of positivity there. Then I'll talk about the undrafted free agents, and I'd say that to keep an eye on Deshaun Jameson as somebody who might be able to make this roster. I think he has a good shot if he continues to grow the way that we saw in minicamp. And then, what's going to happen along the defensive line? What do the 49ers, do they really believe in Javon Kinlaw? He wasn't there during minicamp, so we didn't get to see that. So, it'll be interesting to see if the other undrafted rookie free agent on that side, Spencer Wagee, if he's able to push to maybe get a roster spot. So a lot of positives. I would say this 49ers team is loaded. They just need a quarterback that gets the ball in the right spot.
Yeah, I would definitely say on the offensive side of the ball, I agree. Ayuk has looked really, really good. And then I would say Christian McCaffrey. I mean, and Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is lean and mean and fast, and he just looks awesome. He looks like he's going to have a huge year. But McCaffrey's on a different level. Ayuk's on a different level. And then I would also say the other thing that's really stood out to me, and I would just kind of say it this way, the young DBs. I think getting Steve Wilks here, the timing could not be better because Steve's a great teacher. He's got a great eye for talent. And look at all the young talent they have in their secondary. Diamador Lenore, Talanoa Hufanga, even the free agent signing of Isaiah Oliver, Samuel Womack, Jair Brown, Darrell Luter. All these guys have looked. Deshaun Jameson. There's a lot of good-looking young DBs. I mean, I just named 7 young defensive backs that all of them look good to me. So to me, if there's like, hey, tell me something I don't know, or give me something new, I'd say the Niners young DBs are going to make that secondary much more of a strength than a liability. In the past, they've had a great D-line, great linebackers, and kind of you're crossing your fingers a little bit in the secondary. Now I think they've got some real talent in the secondary. And I think you're going to see that really add quite a bit to their football team. Niners Nation, my buddy Kyle Posey has an article out. He says, who is your favorite personality on the 49ers? And this is a good one because this team is full of all kinds of personalities. Jack, you get a chance to go in the locker room and talk to these guys. They're not just jerseys and numbers to us. We get a chance to talk to them and get a feel for what what the personalities are like. Who's your favorite personality in the room?
Favorite personality. That's an interesting one. I would say, we don't really get a chance to talk to Trent Williams very much, but when he does come up to the mic, it's always kind of fun to hear what he has to say, just because he's been around for so long. And I love listening to offensive linemen talk because they're just different, and the way they see the game, I think, is really solid. So if you're listening to somebody talk, really listen to those offensive linemen because they know what's going on. So I really like him. I'm trying to think, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, sometimes when he gets up there, he's pretty good. Kyle Juszczyk is pretty good as well. I like listening to Brock Purdy talk as well. I think he's pretty open from a quarterback spot. He's always just seemed really easy at the podium. It's just come natural to him, probably from all of his experience doing it at Iowa State. Over on the defensive side, Jimmy Ward was an interesting guy to listen to last year. So, right now you just pretty much have Fred Warner on that side who's really outspoken. I think those would be most of the guys that I would point to.
Yeah, I would go. I like Dre Greenlaw. I think Greenlaw's a great personality. I mean, he loves to hit. He's a really cool, down to earth guy. Always loved interviewing Dre. He gives you good, thoughtful answers, but he's an easygoing, cool guy. So I like Dre. I like Drake. I think Drake is a great young personality. He's got a lot to say. He's very, very fun. He's a young guy. He kind of reminds me of my kid, just because he's basically the same age as my kid. He's a great personality. Huscheck's a good one. Kittle, I think, is probably the biggest personality in the room. But I'll give you a sleeper one. Jason Poe is hilarious. And if you get a chance to talk to Jason Poe, he definitely will make you laugh. And then if you're looking for like a real introspective, interesting interview, Willie Snead, the veteran wide receiver who's been around the block and seen it all, played with Breeze, has had a whole career, has seen the ups and the downs. He's a great guy to go to for perspective on things. And I'll give you one more, and a guy that I really enjoyed talking to last year for his candor, his honesty, his realism. I like Ray Ray. I like Ray Ray McLeod. Mm-hmm. I think Ray Ray he shoots you straight, man. You ask him a question, he gives you an answer. He can be, he can talk about his own personal failures, but he's very humble. He owns his failures, but he deflects from his success. And, guys that do that, that's pretty damn cool. Mm-hmm. Give me one player that you're really excited to see progress this summer. I got a couple that I'm thinking of, but give me one or two that you're really excited to see this summer kind of progress for whatever reason.
I'm excited to see Jordan Mason. You mentioned his name as somebody who stood out. I'm looking forward to seeing if that progression continues from him because, if he's able to continue to keep catching the ball the way that he's been doing it so far this offseason, that puts him right in that running to really get a lot more carries or be a part of the running game as your second running back, maybe instead of Elijah Mitchell. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Jordan Mason can do. I'm looking forward to seeing what the tight ends do because right now you have George Kittle, but you really don't have anything else behind that. So where's that progression going to go? McKivitz, I want to see what he can do. I want to see him getting more reps, and I felt like he did pretty good during minicamp. So once the pads come on, I want to see what he does during those team drills during that part and kind of see where he excels. Over on the defensive side, I want to see what's going to happen at linebacker. Marcelino Mercuri-Ball, is he able to make this roster? What happens with the two rookies over there? So how does that room play out? Because I think Mercuri-Ball is one of those young guys that could really change the way that room comes together. I want to see something from Jair Brown. I know he hasn't given up any big plays because the ball hasn't necessarily gone over his head. I haven't seen him really make any plays on the ball yet. And I've seen him, not be able to get his hands on a couple of guys on catches underneath where they ran by him. So I really want to see what Jair Brown brings to the table. I want to see if he can elevate his game and really start to push for that starting spot, try to push Tayshaun Gibson there.
I'll give you a couple. I want to see Danny Gray. I just think Danny Gray has got explosive traits, and I think he's not just a speedster with no ball skills. This guy's got good ball skills, and I think he's got a nice future. And then there was a great piece written in The Athletic this week that I would encourage you guys all to go check out. It was Matt Barrows who did a kind of a deep dive on Cameron Latu, the rookie tight end from Alabama. And the 49ers really feel like Latu's the kind of guy that's got lower body power to move you as a run blocker and block defensive ends. He also has like an 84-inch wings or a 79 and an eighth-inch wingspan, and just great athleticism. He made a couple of highlight plays. He's only played tight end for 2.5 years. He was a defensive end who transitioned, and there's a lot of upside there. And I just think that in a pro system with better coaching, better surrounding cast, we're going to see Latu, I think, get dramatically better in a short amount of time. So definitely Danny Gray and definitely Cameron Latu on offense. On defense, I'm interested to see Cleveland Farrell. There's a lot of people that feel like Cleveland Farrell is going to elevate, the same way that Arden Key elevated when he left the Raiders. Just a better situation with more talent, no expectations of being a top 5 pick like he had with the Raiders. And I'm interested to see if Cleveland Farrell can play a significant role. And then Spencer Wagee, the undrafted kid from North Dakota State. I mean, there's just, when I watch this guy, I see motor, I see incredible technique for a young guy. I see a guy who's got a defensive tackle body but has a defensive end game. And, until if they don't add an edge rusher, I think they're going to need some help on the defensive end spot. And Wagee might be a guy who actually, even though there's no fanfare coming out of college as an undrafted college free agent, I've seen a lot of things that I really, really like. And then I also kind of want to see if Jake Moody can be consistent. If Jake Moody's got a monster leg, he kicked a 60-plus yard field goal in practice the other day. He's a totally different kind of kicker than Robbie Gould, but Robbie Gould was so consistent. And if Moody, it's great that Moody's got a booming leg, but we got to see consistency there. Otherwise, it can't be considered an upgrade. So, those are the guys I'm really looking forward to seeing. I mean, amongst others, but those are the ones that stand out. Jack, I'm going to jump because I'm on the radio at 2:00 in San Francisco on 95.7 The Game. Tell people what you got cooking on the channel, either today or in the days ahead, and what you're writing about in the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. If I go to the Press Democrat website, or if I decide to go pick one up, what am I reading today?
Yeah, so if you decide to go over to the website a little bit later on, you'll see an article that's going to be going up. It's going to be around the 49ers defense and how they can improve. We talked about it a little bit on this show, but I'm working on putting that together for an article, why that continues to be a point of discussion for the 49ers. So that'll be out. And then as far as the channel, just keep it in. I keep putting up some little videos from the practices that we've been to. And then I do my own little videos, try to keep them short, 5 to minutes or so, little updates on different things. And so there'll be some stuff coming out probably around that defensive line, possibly even a Kyle Shanahan, where he needs to improve. Haven't got that one all quite sorted out yet, but just keep it locked in. There's always stuff coming up on the channel for sure.
Really appreciate your content, man. Always great to rap with you. Maybe we'll do this next Friday. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm down.
Jack, have a great weekend, man. Enjoy the good weather we're getting here in Northern California in June, and great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Take care, Larry.
Oh, wait a second. Come back. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was just telling you to have a good show today. You're heading into the city to get on the radio, so have a good show.
Thanks, Jack. Talk to you soon, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
The great Jack Hammer in the house. We got one here that I got to throw out from Daniel. Daniel Gomez. He says, "Hey, let me tell you something, Larry. We need some San Francisco Giants videos soon. Luis Matos got called up, and the Giants are looking much better than they were at the start of the season. We have a hell of a series with the Dodgers. In fact, tonight, Daniel, join me in the post game tonight. First of all, join me. I want you guys all to join me at 2:00 on 95.7 The Game. Me and Mark Willard will talk a lot of baseball today. We got the Giants farm director on. And Kyle Haynes. We'll talk to him about some of the young prospects coming up and some of the even better prospects they have deep in the minor leagues. They got a guy named Raynell Arias that I got to ask him about. And then Farhan's going to join us tonight as well on 95.7 The Game. And then I've reached out to Matt Chisholm and asked Farhan to join me and Ned Coletti after the Giants Dodgers game tonight. So join me for. And I don't know if Farhan will be able to make the Krueger show. Wouldn't that be something if he could? But Ned Coletti is going to join us. Dan Cochimilio is going to join us. Giants-Dodgers game 1 tonight from Chavez Ravine. And we'll come on afterwards taking your maybe some video calls. I think we'll do that tonight. Reading a bunch of your chats and talking a lot of Giants baseball with Ned Coletti, former Dodger GM, former Giant assistant GM, Dan Cochimilio, who's a big-time Giants fan, and he'll be joining us. And maybe if Matt Chisholm comes through for us, we may even have Farhan joining the conversation on the Krueger show. So how incredible would that be? Farhan and Ned Coletti talking baseball after Giants Dodgers. So definitely tune in tonight after the Giants and the Dodgers for the Krueger show on YouTube. And you're right, Daniel. I do need to do some Giants videos here in the coming days because the Giants are suddenly very, very interesting. A lot to talk about for sure on Giants baseball. All right. let's shout out our sponsors. On the bottom of the screen there, you see our new sponsor, Marin Auto Glass. If your windshield gets cracked and you need someone to replace it, marinautoglass.com. Give them a call also at 415-883-3030. We're also brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Corte Madera and in Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County, and they're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, welcome back to the Krueger Show. We're coming down the home stretch. A couple more in the chat before I bolt for the door. Mark Graves says, yeah, the round table tonight will be fire. Oh, yeah, tonight's going to be fun. I love talking ball with Ned. I did a stream the other night with Ned and Marty Lurie and Danny. Oh, man, it was one of my favorites of all time. Just awesome. Just absolutely awesome. Marty and Ned. And tonight, maybe we'll definitely have Ned and Danny. I don't know if we'll have Farhan, but if we do, that will be one for the ages as well. Luke Luna says, Larry wants to ride the fence and say that Drake Jackson's going to have 10-plus sacks, and that's where the Vegas over-under should be. But then he says if Bosa gets hurt, we only have Hyder. Luca, no, I believe in Drake wholeheartedly. I really think Drake's a stud. It's just a matter of depth. You know, last year, look what they had last year. They had Ebukam and Amenahue and Jordan Willis. That's 700 snaps. That's being replaced by Austin Bryant and Cleveland Farrell. And I'm just a little concerned about those two guys, to be honest. And you know, I love the Niner line when you keep everybody fresh. Chris likes to run a rotation of guys. I just think they're one defensive end away. Maybe that defensive end's Robert Beal, you know, the rookie from Georgia. I can't discount that. Maybe Drake takes off and becomes so damn good that they don't need that extra veteran edge piece. But to me, if the Commanders are willing to move off of Chase Young or Montez Sweat, and all you got to trade is a 3rd or 4th round pick after watching what the Niners have done in day 3 of the draft and as with undrafted free agents, hell yes, I'm making that move. I'm making that move because the Niners have proven under Peters and Lynch that they can find guys on day 3 of the draft and after the draft that can really, really help them. Clarsard says Niners will definitely add a veteran edge. Drake Jackson is still developing. Remix says Giants can go 2nd place in the NL West, maybe 1st. Who knows? How about that? Kyle McKiernan and Larry, I know you got to go, but I listened to Ned Coletti last night on KMBR with FP Santangelo. They ended up not even talking ball, but his story about Oracle Park was unreal. You'd never believe it. Oh, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of Ned Coletti. He's a great storyteller, and you can talk ball with him, or you can just talk life and experiences and stories, and Ned can be outstanding either way. Nesto says trade Elijah Mitchell for Danielle Hunter. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know that they need a running back. I know they've got Dalvin right now. They also have Ty Chandler from North Carolina behind him. They've got the kid from Minnesota. They've got University of Minnesota. They've got some depth at running back in Minnesota. But the Niners have depth at running back as well. And if you want to trade off of a surplus for an edge rusher, man, how good would Danielle Hunter be on that line opposite Nick Bosa? That would be really, really fun. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to everybody. We're an hour and 12 minutes into this live stream. Hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that just helps more people find our shows. If you hit subscribe, you'll just get an alert every single time we go live that we are indeed going live. And we are closing in on 19,000 subs. How about that? We're at 18,931. We may hit 19,000 subs tonight. How incredible would that be? So my son is making a number of different videos and putting them out on the channel. So go check out what we have going video-wise. Did one today on why Cameron Latu is a guy to watch this year. Really stemmed off the article that Matt Barrows wrote in The Athletic about Latu. We also talked a little bit about Kirk Cousins that Jack and I talked about earlier today. There's more on that video as well. But yeah, we're at 18,931 subs. So if you're in the chat right now and you've yet to subscribe, please do. And of course, if you want to be a channel member, it's $4.99 a month, and we appreciate every single one of our channel members as well. So one last one. Let's see. We got guys. Brother Bob says, wait, you're no longer Pig in a Pickle? Oh, yeah, we're Pig in a Pickle. Pig in a Pickle. Got to love Pig in a Pickle. Oh, Kevin Krueger, my son, jumps in and says, check out the merch on our YouTube page. We've got brand new merch. So if you want sweatshirts, embroidered sweatshirts, T-shirts, we got a great way you can do it now through YouTube. And it's very reasonably cost stuff if you want to support the show by getting a Krug Show T-shirt or sweatshirt, hoodie. Go check that out. We've got merch. And congratulations to Kevin, by the way. He just finished his 3rd year at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I can't wait for Tuesday because he will be here. He'll be back from school, and you'll see some upgrades made to our studio and our overall presentation once Kev gets back from school. Kev says, merch. So love that kid. He's doing a great job. All right, that does it for us. Time for me to bolt for the city and head to 95.7 The Game. Join me at 2:00 with Mark Willard on 95.7 The Game. Kyle Haynes from the Giants stops by to talk minor leaguers, and Farhan Zaidi is going to join us, and it should be a fantastic afternoon on the best sports radio station in the Bay, 95.7 The Game. And until 2:00, have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one.